Well, sad news today. Marianne Faithful passed away.
I just saw that. I haven't even had time to think about it. I just got out of the car, and as I was driving up, and I was sitting at a red light, and I just looked down, and there it was. And now I just got home, and I'm talking to you, and it hadn't even begun to process in my head yet.
Yeah. I mean, 78, they just said she passed away peacefully at home. I didn't think she was ill or anything, right? I mean,
No,
78 feels young these days, right?
it does. But there was a long time in her life where she was living pretty fast. You know.
But Keith Richards, she was literally there. Maybe that's what happened.
No, he's got his own category. I mean, he's a different cat.
I just feel like somebody who's so irrevocably associated with the Rolling Stones,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
just expect them to live forever, I think.
Well, she got plenty out of that life, that's for sure.
I only saw her once. She was here when Metallica had their 30th anniversaries at the Fillmore,
Mm-hmm.
and they put
Oh,
on
right, yeah.
Yeah, it was 4 nights of concerts with all kinds of crazy special guests, and Marianne Faithful turned out, and she was amazing. And I was like, wow. That's when I knew Metallica were like really famous. I was like, you got Marianne Faithful to show up your
Yeah.
party
Yeah.
and sing? Like, wow.
I'm trying to wonder. When do you think? When's the last time they got a hard no on something from anybody? It's probably been a minute.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
It's hard to make that transition in your head from like the Bay Area's biggest metal band to like the world's biggest band. In my head, I could still run into them at a gig and have, I mean, I remember James turned up at like a Death Angel Christmas show at Slim's a few years back. And I was like, okay. Like that used to happen all the time. But now you're like, is he safe here?
I saw them I saw them in '89 and Justice for All tour, and that was it. They were brand new to me. I mean, I'd heard the name, I'd heard of the band, and I knew that Ride the Lightning was an album by a band from San Francisco, but I was not into that. I wasn't a metal guy. And then I got in Justice for All, and I was kind of like, this is not my normal thing, but there's something about this that's kind of cool. And I went to see them, and it was just mind blowing. But I was at an outdoor gig in Atlanta with 12,000 insane people. And I'm like, I thought this is like the biggest cult band I've ever seen in my life, And then 2 years later, the Black Crowes were on Monsters of Rock in Europe. And AC/DC headline, Metallica was second on the bill. That's right when the Black album came out. Mm-hmm. And so over the course of like 6 weeks, every weekend, we're doing like 2 stadiums. And we would play at 2 PM. We were the first band on the bill, and then like Queensryche, and then Motley Crue, and then somebody else. Sometimes it was Pantera. There was a few other bands on there, but then Metallica would come out, and they're opening with Enter Sandman, which was the brand new song, and I knew they were a big band, obviously, but on that tour, every show when they would come out, you just felt it was like a giant wave. You could feel it building. And they would kick into that song, and we would stand there on the side of the stage, and we talked about it every night. It was like, oh, they're becoming the biggest band on earth now. You could feel it. You know what I mean? Like, Motley Crue, long established, people love them. And then after Metallica, AC/DC would come out, and they were still AC/DC, and the place went crazy for them too. But this is 11 years after Back in Black. So there's no question about their place. But this was Metallica. What they were actually doing was surpassing Guns N' Roses. That's what you could feel. Like, this is going to be the biggest thing ever. And then a year later, they did that tour with Guns N' Roses, Come Away Smelling Like a Rose, when Guns N' Roses torched their whole career with that tour, their reputation. And then by 90, so that was 91 on that tour. We're back doing festivals in 93, and they are still touring the Black Album and headlining festivals. Like, we've gone through an entire other album cycle. We're finishing our second album's tour, and we're in Belgium at a festival, and we're like, hey guys, they're like, hey guys. And we're like, this is still happening. And, it's like
still opening with Enter Sandman, huh?
Yeah. And it was the same, but that had happened. They had taken that leap. And to me, from sitting where I've sat, they didn't give up a bit of it. They're still there. They're just, that 91 to 93, they just took over the world and never looked back. It's pretty incredible.
Now they're doing 2-night stadium stands.
Yeah.
Everywhere, which
because you got to do something
you
got to do something to make it new and interesting. And that's a pretty weird place to be.
You're talking about 120,000 tickets.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere you go, every night, there's 120,000 tickets. And if you're not selling well, it's obvious.
They can,
you're selling well.
And the way they're doing it, they can do this they could do this every year. Just say, you know what we're doing from now on? We're just touring in the summer. We're just doing the 2-night stand thing. There are more than enough markets in the world for them to do this for the next 10 years.
And, it's funny because that's kind of how Rush went out. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not the stadium stands, but they were like, nobody's really asking us for a new album. Everybody's asking us to just come through town and play the songs. We'll come through town and play the songs. It's not hard to kind of milk it with like here's an anniversary box set and a tour. Here's a retrospective reissue and a tour.
There are worse ways to spend your 60s and 70s.
Yeah. And especially if you're Metallica, every time you put out a new album, everyone wants to hate you for it. Yeah. It's so weird. Every single question is new music? New music? Is there new music coming? Are you working on the new music? When's the new album coming out? And then when it does, everybody's like, sucks.
Yeah, it's also, they're the real test. They're the canary in the coal mine for, we've all seen the Stones do it for this long. And we've seen other bands, but there's never been a metal band or a speed metal band, a screamer band like this that's looking where they're 40 plus years in and they got 50 right around the corner. And, when is it going to stop? I feel like one day Hetfield's going to wake up and his vocal cords will be like on his chest, looking back at him going, dude, we're done. This is over. But until then, man,
this vocal cords will be over here with a cigar.
Yeah. Dude, love you. Appreciate it. But we're done. But apparently there's no time soon.
I hope not. Honestly, I've been having a really fun time with them on this tour. And I think it's a great album. And I don't mind. I mean, they've built it to be a vacation destination.
Yeah.
It's always on a weekend. It's always a Friday and a Sunday. And
it's great.
You can make a 3-day weekend and it's almost always someplace that's fun to go to or a major tourist destination.
Yeah.
I think I agree with you 100%. They could do this in perpetuity.
Are they going to do the Sphere, do you think?
Oh, that would be interesting. I mean,
pretty intense.
Finally, I go see it.
Yeah, they would come up with some visuals, boy.
My friends at Dead & Co. Were like, hey, we're doing another run at the Sphere. Do you want to come see what it looks like? And I was like, I want to see what it looks like, but I don't want to go to a 3-hour Dead show to do it.
Yeah.
Heart you.
Well, yeah. The things we do, the things we have to sacrifice in order to see something.
I might go because I just do want to see it, and then I could just show up late and leave early. Hang out in the green room a lot and try to avoid
I haven't looked to see what the dates are. My son's in LA now and he's like, hey, I need some Dead tickets. I'm like, okay, we'll get to work on that. But I don't know when he's going. But the more I've thought about it, I'm kind of like, well, I mean, it might be the time to go. I wouldn't go see Dead & Company otherwise, I don't think. And so if I'm going to see him again, it's been a long time. I should certainly go tip my hat to those gentlemen. And I thought, well, the Sphere would be a pretty good place to do it.
You couldn't get the kid into the Music Cares thing this weekend?
It's not on his radar, so therefore I don't have to think about it.
Well, in that case, don't tell him I said anything. But Grateful Dead are the Music Cares Person of the Year this year, and they're having a big gala/concert that's going to have all the Dead & Co. folks. But
sure.
If your kid doesn't know, you didn't have to get him in.
He's all about Vegas.
Well, he's in his 20s. I mean, they've made Vegas just for him.
As I've been saying about things my kids have done their whole life, age appropriate. That's a term you hear yourself saying as a parent a lot. You just like remind yourself, it's age appropriate. It's age appropriate. They're not doing this to give me a heart attack. This is what 14-year-olds do.
Yep. And the best part
now this is what 24-year-olds do. It never ends.
And the best part is when somebody's like, well, when were you doing that?
Yeah.
How old were you when that happened? And it's inevitably, at least in my case, like with my nephews or my baby sisters, they are always way behind me.
Oh yeah, no, our kids are 24 and 22, and on certain parts of life, they're light years ahead of where we were at that age. And then in all the other normal practical parts of life, they're light years behind, because they just, when you grow up without GPS, and for that matter, without even knowing how to read a map, you just find it. When you don't have cell phone, we just had things that were so mundane at the time that a person today, I mean, I look back at like life in the 1920s the way my kids look at life in the 1990s. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
technology's advanced so quickly in the last 30 years that, to me, in the 1920s or 30s, they still had cars, but they weren't like what I drove, but I could figure it out if I had to.
But in a large part of America, you had to go outside to pee.
Sure. And I could figure that out if I had to. But take a kid born in 2002 and just send them back to 1989 and say, okay, you're on the road. You're going to go to Kansas City. How do you get there? They would literally go, I don't know. And then you'd say, here's a car key. And they would look at it and go, but how do I open the door? There's videos on YouTube where people pull out a rotary phone, and then put it in front of their college kids, and they say, you have 5 minutes to figure out how to make a phone call for $100, and they can never do it. They have no idea. They just look at it like they might as well be looking at a butter churn. It's like, I don't know.
And in 1992, I packed up and put a friend in the car with me, and we drove to the Hollywood Palladium to see the Ramones. And all I had was literally the address to the Palladium on the ticket stub.
Yeah.
I didn't have a map. I didn't have GPS. I was like, whatever. I mean, I know it's south, and I know how to get to 5, and I know 5 gets to, we'll get down to 101 to the Hollywood Freeway, and I'll take the Hollywood Freeway until I get to whatever street the Palladium is on, right? If worst case scenario, you pull over and ask for directions.
I left Western Kentucky University for spring break in Daytona Beach with $32. Me and 2 buddies piled into a tiny Honda Civic, and we left Bowling Green, Kentucky, and got to Daytona Beach. We didn't have a map. We just knew we got to get to Atlanta and then keep going south. That's what we knew. And so I was like, well, let's just get to Nashville and see what the signs all say. And then one said Chattanooga. I know Chattanooga's towards Nashville, or towards Atlanta. And then as you're approaching Atlanta, as you're approaching Chattanooga, you see a sign that says Atlanta. And then you see a sign that says, you go south from Atlanta, and then it's like Florida. And you're like, yeah, let's go to Florida. And then at some point it says, you can either go like toward the middle, toward the West Coast, or the East Coast. You're like, go to the East Coast. Let's get on that 95. And I mean, you just get there. And again, and by the way, I had $32 and I went down there for a week. And had a blast. Yeah. Because I met people every day and said, can I crash on the floor of your hotel? And every day, at least one person said, sure. And then
we had something similar where we stopped at a hotel that was that turned out to be super ghetto, and AAA had recommended it too. Before I left, I did go to AAA, and they told me how to get there. So, but I didn't take the map with me or anything.
Yeah.
And then they give me this hotel that turned out to be just like crackhead central. Like, we locked ourselves in there, and I spent most of the night looking out the window, making sure my car was still there. Mm-hmm. And then we went to another place. We just packed up the next morning and then drove down the street. And then when we got to Palladium, we found out that they'd added 2 more nights. And I was like,
yeah,
you want to go tomorrow?
Here we go.
Sure. So we just went to the box office and bought tickets for the next 2 nights and just stayed, because why not? Because we had the days off from work.
Yeah. I mean, my kids now can tell you so many things about so many things, and they can navigate airports very easily, and they can navigate getting to a hotel very easily, but take the phone away from them and just say, you got to go somewhere that's 300 miles away on very little money and no phone and no anything. That's putting me in a covered wagon 100 years ago.
That's a thing that people do now. I have a friend who does this thing. It's called orienteering. And I think that's basically what they do. That you get like a compass and some coordinates, and they drop you in the wilderness, and you try to see how fast you can go from coordinates to coordinates.
That's pretty cool. Not for me. It's pretty cool for the people that can do it. I would be a little concerned for my own self. There was a time in my life when I probably could have handled that pretty well, but I think it's been a while.
I'm like, survival training is not appealing to me. I'm just going to go ahead and die at this point. I'm like, I've had a good run.
Yeah. Sure.
But if I have to literally run and if it's uphill, I'm good. I'll let the killer catch me.
No need.
Speaking of half dead, David Lee Roth is the headliner at M3 in Baltimore. And
okay, what is M3? A festival?
Yeah. It's like it's a music festival that's been going on for years, and it's always geared toward like that 80s hair metal stuff. You know, like right. A reunited version of Rat is going to be playing, and God, who else is Winger is playing, and I guess so. There's two things happening right now. The M3 lineup is being heavily criticized because it's either the same artists or it's artists that people are like about.
Okay.
And then the other thing is David Lee Roth as a headliner on a festival stage, and I'm like, Dave,
what?
In a minute.
What is he? Yeah, it's interesting to know what he's still capable of. I mean, and no disrespect intended. Last few times I've seen anything from him, he was actually making fun of himself for how poorly he was singing. You know, he's like has good self-deprecating humor about it, but that'll be interesting.
I saw his Las Vegas residency, and it was super fun, but it only translated as a Las Vegas lounge act, where he's shuffling around and Dave's doing Dave's stuff and he's telling stories and he's, having the band change songs at the last minute because he thought of something while he was telling the story about it. And he's it's that lounge stuff, that on the fly kind of like, hey, I'm a guy doing this thing that does not translate to a headline festival stage at an open air amphitheater. And I'm like, do people know?
We'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Somebody will see. I'm not going.
Yeah. And hey, I love Charm City, big Baltimore. I lived there till I was 10, still got family there, but it's going to take a little more than a DLR show to get me back right now.
Oh, here's something I wanted to ask you about, because I think I only knew of this from you. Did you see Sinead O'Conner in her will left instructions to her kids to milk all of her material as best they can going forward? Anything that comes out of the vaults, anything that she's ever recorded, she's like, don't be precious with it. I do not care. She's like, use it, live off of it, make the money from it. But she also says, stop, drop, and keep an eye on your record labels and your lawyers and your accountants, because they will try to keep the money.
Yeah, sure. I did not see any of that, but yeah, good for her and good for them that their mom's thinking about it and letting them do that. It's funny. I think the people who have the least problem with saying just fleece the catalog for all it's worth are the people who, when they made that music, were the furthest removed from thinking about money, because her intentions truly were pure. She wrote and recorded music for decades that just meant something to her, that resonated deeply. And then when it resonated to outsiders, it was almost like a surprise, like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so it's like, okay, I'm no longer here. It's going to be taken, might as well be taken by the people I love to help their lives. It's not even switching up. It's not even like flipping a switch. It's not like an artist who speaks of artistic purity and then decides, oh, screw it, I'm going to sell out. It's more like, that was never even an option. I'm gone. This is all I can leave my kids. And then it turns into, it's just an opportunity for them. I think that's great. Because I'm imagining nobody in the modern era, but some Gen X person's going, I didn't know she was a sellout. No, she's not a sellout. She's dead and she's looking after her kids. It's a very different story.
My biggest concern is like, how is it still possible with this day and age of electronic accounting and everything that record labels can still get away with just not paying people?
Hey, man, I just got my cell phone bill for we have the cell phone and the Wi-Fi and the internet at home, AT&T, my dear friends at AT&T. I get the bill and I look at it and it's a little normal. It's higher than the normal monthly bill. I'm like, that's weird. I open it up. There's an extra phone on my bill, phone line. I'm like, what? There's my number. There's my wife's number. There's the kids' numbers. what's this fifth phone?
Somebody
I go to AT. No, I have no idea. I call AT&T. There's not a human being within 100 years that'll call me back. I end up online doing the online chat with someone, and I'm like, "Hey, my bill is screwed. This is too much." And I looked, and there's a number that I don't know what that is. And they're like, "Oh, well, so this is and the person who's chatting back with me, it literally took me 15 minutes of saying, I don't understand what the problem is. I don't know this number. None of my family's ever used this number. This is clearly either fraud or someone hit a wrong button on your end. I've had 4 numbers with you for 15 years. And now there's a 5th number added that none of us recognize. I need it removed from my account. And if I paid for it, any monies I pay, and they're just like, so, but do you think anybody in your family would like to use this number? And I'm just pulling my hair out. I'm going, how is this difficult for you to understand? I don't know what this number is. Why is it on my thing? So if I hadn't clicked opened, if I just reviewed it, saw the charge and saw, plenty of people don't look at the number. When you're paying something every month automatically, it's easy to forget to look at the bill. And you know what? I just happened to look at it because I had nothing else to do. And I was like, what the hell is this? I mean, chances are I would have gone a year and never even looked at it. But I'm just saying, so that's record companies. Come on, man. They got people whose job it is to squirrel away money to the side and wait for someone to say, where's my money?
Oh God. I had that happen with AT&T once. They tried to charge me I want to say it was like 20 or $50 because I had gotten a new phone and I didn't buy the phone through them. I just bought my own iPhone and then was like, hey, here's my new phone. I need the SIM card, whatever. And when I upgraded, there was this extra charge. And I'm like, what is this about? And they were like, oh, it's a change fee. And I'm like, change fee for what? And they're like, you got a new phone. And I'm like, and I'm like, it's the electronic SIM. So you basically just transferred it. There was no addition. There's no charging here. And they were like, hold on. And it was like, escalate. Finally, somebody comes on and they're like, it's a fee we charge because we have to upgrade our equipment whenever Apple upgrades a phone. And I'm like, well, that's not my problem.
Yeah.
That's not a me fee. That's a you fee.
Yeah,
You take that off the bill. And they did. But then I was like, hey, everybody, I don't know if you've noticed this, but they're just popping fees onto your bill. And you're right. People are not going to notice.
Here's a great name drop story. Went to dinner once, a few of us with Robert Plant and some of the guys in his band. And we were at an Indian restaurant and had a great meal. And when the check came, he said, I'll get it. And he took it, but he looked at the thing. And I mean, he really looked. And I remember thinking at the time, like, why is he, I mean, I just thought like, wow, like, does it really matter? And then sure enough, on the itemized bill, the waiter came over and he said, there are 3 items here that we did not have. And the guy goes, oh, I'm so sorry. And he took it off. And he said, that happens he goes, you just, when they figure out who you are, if they think you're famous, they think you're never going to look. And he said, it's just a principle thing. He goes, I don't care about the extra rice. He goes, but it just drives me crazy that people think I'm so stupid, And it was like, yeah, good point, man. That's what it is.
And I'll bet you they're probably counting on some egos at the table.
Of course.
Throwing down the card and just being like, I got this, Mr. Plant,
Of course they are. Yeah. No, I learned a lesson a long time ago, or I didn't have to even be taught. It's like, if you're at dinner and someone at the table's in Led Zeppelin, you know what? Let them buy dinner.
I
was going to say, they got it. What's that?
I let whoever's at the table buy dinner.
My rule early, and when I discovered early on that thing you said is very true. There's an ego thing about I got this and I got that, and I never had that. I was like, what are you, crazy? This is why don't we all, because, and I know it's a pain in the ass to split the check and all that, but in my mind, it's just, hey, everybody, I'll pay it to make it easier here, but throw me some cash. I mean, it just to me, it was always like, it's not an ego thing to just pick up the check, but I was around a lot of people that like to do that a lot. And then every now and then they go, Steve, it's your turn. And I said, my rule is this: anytime we're at a restaurant where your placemat is also your menu, I will pick up the check. That's the rule. So if you get there and you look down and that paper placemat also is the menu, like it is at many fine diners across America, then I'll pick up the check there.
For everybody.
Yeah, that's where I'll pick up the check.
I always have this rule where it's like, I am prepared to pay my share. I will not order anything that I am not prepared to pay for, and I will happily break out my credit card and split my bill off from the group. I can afford to do that. But also, if the egos are out and the credit cards are out and they're fighting over it, I will sit there quietly and then thank the winner profusely. Thank you so much. Of
course. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I've just over the years, there's certain things like, you know, in the old days when record companies were a thing and they all had distribution branches all over because they had so much product, you'd go to these, Warner Electra Atlantic would have a branch somewhere all over the country. And, you know, and as a member of a band that was selling a lot of records, you know, you'd be in town if you went to see somebody and they'd always have a big locker from all the promo copies like, hey, man. And so I remember walking into a place once and I was like, they had the entire John Coltrane catalog. And I said, oh, can I get some of the Coltrane? And the guy goes, yeah, just get one of every one of them on CD. And I said, thank you. And I will take those. And I remember talking just at times there would be certain people go, that's terrible, man. You should buy music, like early 90s, classic Gen X stuff. And I would go, those CDs were already made. They're going to go to somebody. They can go to me just as easily. You know, it's like people are taking Black Crowes records out of those lockers every damn day. I think it's okay I think we're all even here on the grand scheme of things.
My whole thing started when I was like, I was in the record store. I don't have to buy records anymore. I get music for free. I'll buy the tickets. Then I started working at Bass Tickets. And I was like, well, now I work for the ticketing company. I don't have to buy tickets anymore. And then I started working for the concert promoter and the radio station. And now I'm like, I am here to support you however I can, as long as there's no money involved.
Sure. Yeah.
Let me talk about your bands.
Not only is there no money involved, how about parking? Can we work in a parking space?
God, you were so right.
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to for me.
Whenever I do have any kind of industry like meetup that's not industry, I always am like, are you expensing? Oh, great.
Yeah.
Thank you. But if you're not expensing, I'm here to help pay. But if you're expensing,
then we're ready to roll.
Yeah. I'm ordering wine.
Yeah, sure.
Couple biopics I wanted to ask you about. Biopic. I think both are correct at this point.
Whatever. Movies about people.
Well, you're the Dylan guy, so I wondered if you saw the Timothy Chalamet movie.
Yes, loved it. Absolutely loved it. Yeah. I'm not sweating over the things that were historically inaccurate. I'm not even upset that the guy who plays Johnny Cash is terrible. It's the one part I was like, this guy, I get that you're not trying to get someone to do a Johnny Cash impersonation necessarily, but I just didn't like that particular casting choice. But what they totally crushed was the fact that, I mean, the movie's called A Complete Unknown. And by the end of the movie, he is still a complete you don't feel like, oh, I get Bob Dylan now. No, the point is you're never going to get Bob Dylan.
I was going to say.
The guy just showed up in New York from Minnesota, and he, over the course of a very few years, wrote all those songs and mystified and confused and annoyed everyone he crossed. That's the story. There's no lesson. There's no great insight. And that guy has never changed. He's 60 years into being that guy. 65 years into being that guy, or 4. I guess he got there in 1961. Like, you think about when he met the Beatles in 64 and it was a big deal. Like, the Beatles were still very, you know, it's very true. They were still singing She Loves You and I Want to Hold Your Hand. And then they meet Dylan, and they had already been listening to his records, and they're like, God, man, why don't we get to write songs like that? I mean, you know, like, he spun them around in a big way. Not to mention everybody else, but they're the biggest thing ever. And of course, they were very much like, yeah, we're still writing songs that teenagers will make out to. And he's over there writing songs about, you know, Medgar Evers. Okay. But I thought the movie was great. And I thought Chalamet was fantastic because it's a pretty impossible thing to do. And he did it, which is, there were moments, not the whole time, but just several very, very key moments where I thought I was just watching a young Bob Dylan. I forgot I'm in a movie. Like, it got me. And so that's a huge success in my mind.
I was curious because when it didn't do well at the Golden Globes, I was like, oh, maybe I'll wait on this one. But then it's got all the Oscar noms. So I don't know what the was, but Hollywood.
It's great. I mean, and for there are certain people that, I mean, I stopped trying a long time ago when someone goes, what's the big deal with Bob Dylan? I don't even try to answer. It's like, if you don't get it, that's fine. I mean, I don't know how you couldn't, but that's okay. But I think that some of the criticisms of the movie, like I said, they're just like, it just starts and then all this stuff happens and it just kind of ends and you don't get answers. And that's the whole, like David Lynch, like, when David Lynch died, what did Kyle MacLachlan say in that beautiful post he wrote? He said he never cared about answers. He was all about the questions. And it's really true. It's like the questions are what fuels you. And Bob Dylan, in a lot of ways, is the same thing. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to observe with detachment. So a lot of the songs he wrote that were really heavy songs about, you call them political songs, but they're really social science songs. They're just about our culture. He was able to just drill in immediately because he wasn't emotionally invested. He was just like an observer. And so a song like With God on Their Side, he's just observing it going, this is what's happening. You can hate it. You can love it. You can say I'm crazy, but this is how I see it. And, there's a lot to be said for that detachment. It's a crystallized, very pure view of certain things.
If only we all had it.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Are you going to go see him? I heard he just announced a small town tour.
Yeah, he's playing in Minnesota. First show in his home state in 6 years. In April. It's Mankato, so it's a little bit of a drive, but I'll schlep out to see Bob. We just saw him in the last summer on the Outlaw Country tour.
Right.
And he was great. It was totally, he was very energized and you could tell he was feeling it. And, anytime that guy gets up and sings Hard Rain Gonna Fall and cares, it's like, okay, that's a moment that I'll never forget.
Nice.
Yeah, he was great.
The other one is there's a Sly Stone biopic now that I believe is based on his memoir. And it's done by Questlove. So I've read the book, but I haven't seen biopic yet. But also,
I'll watch it.
To be pretty on the money.
I go into stuff like that with trepidation because you just can't hope. But like, I hope I don't get my heart broken, and you're gonna. But yeah, hell yeah, I'll watch that.
Yeah, I'm excited because I think that if there's one recurring theme in his book, it's how he makes $1 million and loses $1 million and makes $1 million and loses $1 million.
No, he makes $1 million and loses $1 million too.
Yeah, there you go.
And then he makes $1 million and loses $1 million three. It never quite seesaws back to 50-50 with him.
He leaves behind him an epic selection of outfits and music and collabs and just huge body of work that people just don't seem to recall. There's almost like a small club of people who are like Sly, and then everybody else is
it's insane that he's not on the first tier of names you mentioned for influence and impact. I mean, it really is. It's crazy that hasn't carried through because musicians know. You get any kind of musicians around, you start digging deep into that catalog, and there's always a moment when everybody goes, oh, wait a minute, hold on. I grew up listening to this on the radio, but I hadn't listened to it. Oh my God. There's a million of those moments with Sly.
I think it's like that with anything that was a radio hit when you were a kid and didn't have the musicianship that you go back and listen to it. And suddenly it becomes very apparent which pop hits were musically advanced and which ones were just like.
Sure. I mean, Bee Gees, the Bee Gees disco era, which everybody got sick of. I get it because it was just so big for so long. But you go back and listen to the live Bee Gees album. It's called Here at Last from 77 or 78 or maybe even 79. It's incredible. It's that band is on another planet and they're playing those songs. It's just killer. You know what I mean? It's really, really, really great. And I thought about that because I heard Jive Talking today. And I was just listening to that song, Jive Talking. And I was like, man, if you walked into a club and saw that band playing right now, you'd call everyone you know and go, you've got to come see this band.
Jive Talking is that song where they're like, everybody thinks I'm normal, but in my ears, I'm like walking down the street. Go, Jive.
Yeah, of course. It's awesome.
I love that song.
Amazing.
So when it comes to Le Super Bowl, are you watching?
Oh yeah, no, I'll be watching.
Yeah.
I'm speaking to you on my phone, and I'm at 1%.
Oh shoot. Okay.
So I'm going to say the Chiefs are going to win. They're going to get the first ever three-peat. It won't be because the refs screw the Eagles. It'll be because the Eagles make a mistake when they shouldn't, and the Chiefs don't make mistakes. That's my prediction.
I think you'll be right. I'm not going to watch it. Somebody's going to have to really come up with one incredible snack spread for me to turn up at a Super Bowl party this year.
I won't be at a party, but I'll watch it. I can't not see it. This is Super Bowl 59, and I remember very clearly 54 of those now. There's no reason to break the streak,
You're a completist.
Got to keep the set going as long as I can.